UK Prime Minister Theresa May leaves Buckingham Palace after asking the Queen's permission to form a minority government. May's Conservatives will be supported by a small Northern Irish party after she lost her parliamentary majority in a snap general election. Speaking on the doorstep of her official Downing Street residence, a stony-faced May said the government would provide certainty.
What the country needs more than ever is certainty.
UK Prime Minister Theresa May speaking in London Friday after her Conservative Party fell short of winning a parliamentary majority in the general election, resulting in what's called a hung parliament.
I will now form a government that can provide certainty and lead Britain forward at this critical time for our country.
The Prime Minister will now lead a minority government with an understanding of support from the Democratic Unionist Party, a small Northern Irish party whose 10 seats are enough to give Mrs May and her Conservatives enough votes to govern.
Having secured the largest number of votes and the greatest number of seats in the general election, it is clear that only the Conservative and Unionist Party has the legitimacy and ability to provide that certainty by commanding a majority in the House of Commons.
The election was supposed to bring clarity, but the shock outcome has thrown Brexit talks into disarray. And now EU leaders are warning a delay in negotiations could hurt the chances of securing a deal.
We don't know when Brexit talks start. We know when they must end. Do your best to avoid a no deal as a result of no negotiations.
Sterling dropped as much as 2.5% as the UK election results came through, while the FTSE share index opened higher. The pound recorded 8-week lows against the dollar early on Friday and its lowest levels in 7 months versus the euro. The markets have been anxious to see how Britain will move ahead with its plan to leave the European Union and how stable the UK government is likely to be during that process.
It's been revealed that Italian officials warned British authorities in writing about the threat posed by one of the men behind the London Bridge terror attack.
All the countries in the Western world have vowed to work together in the fight against domestic terrorism in Europe.
All 27 member states continue to work together intensively to solve the challenges of the 21st century, such as fighting terrorism.
And we've agreed to work together to tackle the security risk.
France knows what a terrorist attack represents, the grief and hardship it can cause, and that we must stand united.
But is this really the case? For one, as you've heard, the London Bridge attacker Youssef Zaghba was on the radar. Italian intelligence tracked him while he was in Italy. We even have his mother's audio conversation confirming this. Take a listen.
On March 15, 2016, Youssef was detained at Bologna airport. He told me that he was going to Rome. Shortly after we parted at the airport, I received a phone call from Bologna's airport police. They asked me whether I knew if he was going to Istanbul. I said no. They asked me whether they should hold him at the airport. I said yes.
Then the Italian authorities sent a big warning to the UK saying, watch out, this guy is a terrorist. The UK, however, according to the Times, says they were indeed warned, but there was no mention that he is a terrorist. Well, shouldn't a warning be enough to take precaution?
The French government is preparing to end its ongoing state of emergency, but only by enshrining strict anti-terror measures into common law. The legislation is designed to take over from the state of emergency, which has been in force since the attacks of November 2015 and has already been extended 5 times. Prime Minister Edouard Philippe has submitted proposals to the courts and is due to present them to ministers later this month. However, details of the anti-terror bill have caused concern among magistrates and civil liberty campaigners. Le Monde newspaper reported almost all the measures of the state of emergency can be found in the preliminary bill to strengthen the fight against terrorism and internal security. According to the text, the government intends to give regional police and the Minister of the Interior powers to search individuals and assign them to a specified geographical perimeter, 2 measures from the state of emergency. State officials could also ban places of worship, operate phones or computers, order body searches and electronically tag people for the sole purpose of preventing an act of terrorism.
Australian counter-terrorism police conducted pre-dawn raids in the southern city of Melbourne after a deadly siege that was claimed by the Islamic State group. The Australian Security and Intelligence Organisation joined police in carrying out search warrants on 3 addresses linked to the attack, where they questioned 3 men they said were suspected of providing weapons used in the attack.
While police investigate whether terrorism may have been a motivation in this mowing down of 2 police officers, the suspects have now been identified. They are 22-year-old Brandon Figueres Mormon of Disputata, Virginia, and his passenger, 23-year-old Dwayne Taylor of Prince George, Virginia. The 2 were in a white pickup truck last night about 9 p.m. in the crowded nightlife area of Adams Morgan when they swerved around a bus at a high rate of speed. One witness estimated 50 miles per hour. That pickup truck struck 2 D.C. police officers on bicycles, a city transportation worker, and 2 other pedestrians for a total of 5 victims. The pickup came to rest against a dump truck where the 2 suspects were arrested. Police also found an unregistered weapon in the truck. Taylor faces charges of possession of an unregistered firearm. Figueres Mormon also faces weapons charges as well as an assault with intent to kill charge. One of the officers, who was thrown 30 feet by the impact, is in critical condition, the other in fair condition.
There's no second scene. There was a weapon that was recovered from the suspect's vehicle.
At this point, can you rule out terrorism?
We have to look at that very closely. We do not have a motive at this time.
U.S. authorities said Thursday, as they announced the suspect's recent arrests, 2 men from Michigan and New York City were tasked by a terrorist organization with looking for potential terrorism targets in New York and Panama. 37-year-old Samir El-Debek of Dearborn, Michigan, and 32-year-old Ali Karani of the Bronx were charged in Manhattan federal court with providing support to a terrorist organization. Both men were arrested on June 1st and were being held in New York City after court appearances. Defense lawyers did not immediately comment.
Iran has arrested more than 40 members of the Daesh terrorist group in connection with Wednesday's attacks in the capital, Tehran. Iran's intelligence ministry says the terrorists were arrested in 3 western and northwestern provinces, as well as in Tehran. According to the ministry, a large amount of weapons, explosives, telecommunication devices, and fake ID cards were seized from the detainees. Some safe houses were earlier identified and purged of Wahhabi Takfiri terrorists in Iran's northwest. Iranian intelligence minister Sayyid Mahmoud Alavi has promised to take revenge against those behind the terror attacks in Tehran and their sponsors.
A Hamas field commander died last night in an explosion near the Gaza Strip's Egyptian border. It's unclear what caused the explosion, but it was likely an operation gone awry. Numerous Hamas operatives have been killed by accidental explosions and tunnel collapses over the last few months, and 2 other operatives were injured in the blast in the city of Rafah. All this because Hamas is making rockets and digging tunnels to prepare for another conflict with Israel. While Israel destroyed many of Hamas's tunnels in the 2014 Gaza conflict, the terrorist group has been redoubling its efforts to expand the tunnel network ever since. With pressure on its patron of Qatar to stop supporting the Sunni Islamist group, Hamas may be motivated to make some kind of statement through more attacks on Israel.
Qatar's state-funded news outlet Al Jazeera was hit with a cyber attack this Thursday. The news website is still functional, but the organization says the hacking attempts are gaining intensity and taking various forms. Al Jazeera isn't alone. Just hours after the outlet's announcement, state-run Qatar Television shut down its website to deal with hacking attempts. Coming 2 weeks after a security breach at the Qatar news agency, the attacks Thursday mark 4 hacks of state-backed organizations in the last 14 months. The news agency says hackers posted a fake report on its website. The report claimed Qatar's leader gave a speech that was conciliatory toward Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas, and critical of President Donald Trump.
United States President Donald Trump's push for direct talks between Israel and the Palestinians may be receiving a boost, as Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is reportedly dropping some of his major preconditions for talks, including a freeze on settlement construction. Abbas's senior economic advisor Mohammed Mustafa says that Abbas is prepared to drop his demand to give D.C. a chance to reach a deal. The Palestinian leader began demanding a settlement freeze as a precondition in 2010 on the advice of former President Barack Obama. Mustafa says, however, that the PA has not made settlements an upfront issue this time. Additionally, Abbas may fall back on efforts to have Israeli officials prosecuted at the International Criminal Court on charges of war crimes. In an additional concession to the Trump administration, the Palestinians may stop pushing as hard for anti-Israel resolutions at the United Nations. Reportedly, the poor Palestinian economy and lack of international funding are pushing Abbas back to the negotiating table.
The Kurdish regional government wants to stitch together political differences. It's called for a yes or no vote for an independent Kurdish region. Many here in the de facto capital Erbil support that idea. Abdul Khaliq Muhammad's tailoring business hasn't been as profitable as it used to be in the past, but he says he'll still vote yes.
I shall be voting yes for the Kurdish state, yes for the referendum that ensures Kurdish independence. We must be free and must manage our own affairs independently. My dream is to hold a Kurdish passport.
Masoud Barzani, the president of the Iraqi Kurdish Regional Government, or KRG, announced the vote. His advisors say the referendum will include the areas disputed between the Kurds and Iraqi federal government. The Kurdish military, called Peshmerga, has extended control of many areas after they pushed back ISIL, and their autonomy and influence has created rifts with Baghdad.
The announcement of the date is an important first step, but there are many questions that voters here need the government to answer. These include the borders of the Kurdistan Regional Government, security, finance and currency.
Financing a country based on dwindling oil revenues is not going to be easy. Politicians will have to find solutions for hundreds of thousands of displaced Iraqis who now live in the Kurdish region. And the government also needs money to fund the Peshmerga in their fight against ISIL. But the Kurds in northern Iraq have been fighting for rights since the 1990s, and many are hopeful that this vote paves the way.
Reuters has reported that a woman detonated her explosive belt in a market east of the Shiite holy city of Karbala on Friday, killing at least 30 and wounding 35. Islamic State claimed the attack in the town of Musayyab, south of Baghdad, in a statement on its Amaq news agency. A security officer said the assailant was a woman who hid the bomb under her customary full-body veil. The attack comes as Islamic State is about to lose Mosul, the de facto capital of the hardline Sunni Muslim group in Iraq, to a U.S.-backed Iraqi offensive launched in October.
Reuters has reported that China said on Friday it was monitoring U.S. military activities in the South China Sea after 2 U.S. bombers conducted training flights over the disputed waters. The U.S. Pacific Command said on its website that 2 U.S. Air Force B-1B Lancer bombers flew a 10-hour training mission from Guam over the South China Sea on Thursday, in conjunction with the Navy's USS Sterett guided missile destroyer.
Один боец. Один боец.
You solemnly swear to tell the truth?
An embattled James Comey used his opening statement before the Senate Intelligence Committee to thank the men and women of the FBI and then apologize for not being able to say goodbye. Then he took off the gloves and put his account up against President Trump's.
The administration then chose to defame me and, more importantly, the FBI by saying that the organization was in disarray, that it was poorly led, that the workforce had lost confidence in its leader. Those were lies, plain and simple.
Senators asked the former FBI director, "Why do you think you were fired?" He said, "I'm not quite sure, but I have to take the president at his word, and it must have something to do with the way I handled the Russian investigation." Comey reiterated President Trump pressed him but never told him to stop the probe into ex-National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, but did repeatedly pressure him to publicly declare that he was not under investigation. Comey did say that the president told him that if some of his satellite associates had done something wrong, it would be good for the investigation to find that out. Comey declined to say that if he thought the president had obstructed justice, saying that that was a determination to be made by the special prosecutor. As for the probe into Hillary Clinton's private email server, Comey testified that then Attorney General Loretta Lynch directed him to describe the Hillary Clinton probe as only a matter and not an investigation. In an unexpected bombshell announcement, Comey voluntarily admitted he orchestrated the leak of his memo about President Donald Trump to a Columbia Law School professor who gave it to a reporter. Comey says that he thought it might lead to the appointment of a special prosecutor to lead the Russia investigation.
Morning, President Trump reacted on Twitter. Quote, "Despite so many false statements and lies, total and complete vindication. And wow, Comey is a leaker."
Buenos días. Este es el noticiero El Bus TV. Deje trabajar en la Asamblea Nacional y que respete el voto de los venezolanos.
Muchas gracias. Esto fue El Bus TV. Que tenga buen día.
Buenos días y bienvenidos a una nueva emisión de El Bus TV. Venimos a traer algunas noticias.
Comunicadores sociales venezolanos que decidimos que había una audiencia desatendida y creemos que era necesario acercar la noticia a la gente en vista de que no todo el mundo tiene acceso a internet ni a redes sociales.
Police in Mozambique have warned bald men they may be targeted as part of ritual killings. National Police said 2 bald men were killed last month and their body parts used in witchcraft rituals. Local police commander Miguel Caetano said 1 man's head and internal organs had been removed. Another police spokesman said in local superstitions, bald people are believed to be rich. Police said 2 suspects were arrested in connection with the killings. According to the suspects, the body parts were used in a ritual to increase the wealth of clients in Tanzania and Malawi. Caetano said this was the first instance of bald people being targeted for witchcraft. The area in which the men were killed is known for ritual killings of albinos, whose body parts are also used in witchcraft rituals. The United Nations has recorded over 100 killings of albinos in Mozambique since 2014.
Vice President Mike Pence says Catholics and all Christians have an ally in President Donald Trump. He shared that message with more than 1,000 of them in Washington, D.C. this week.
This is my song.
It's a tradition that attracts Catholics from across the globe.
For the sake of his sorrowful passion.
This year's headliner at the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast, Vice President Mike Pence.
My mom would be so proud.
In his remarks, Pence started with the news of the day and recent terrorist attacks in the United Kingdom and Australia.
They have our prayers.
He then got into his own personal faith and made clear the commitment this administration has to all believers.
American Catholics have an ally in President Donald Trump.
Pence touched on religious freedom, Christian persecution, and of course, protecting the unborn.
But I couldn't be more proud to serve as vice president to a president who stands without apology for the sanctity of human life.
A message that resonated with the crowd and earned Pence several standing ovations.
Even though right-wing Donald Trump is president of the United States, Delaware signed a bill that makes sure abortion stays legal in the state. Trump has made it known that he plans to overturn Roe v. Wade during his presidency. Amanda Allen, a senior state legislative counsel at the Center for Reproductive Rights, disagrees with Trump. She told Reuters.com, "We applaud Governor Carney for sending a strong message that state policymakers will protect women's access to critical reproductive health services in the face of threats at the federal level."
The Supreme Court is refusing to review an appeal from a Marine who was punished for posting a Bible verse in her office. Marine Lance Corporal Manifa Sterling was court-martialed and given a bad conduct discharge after refusing to remove the verse. Monday's decision upholds the ruling of the lower courts, stating superiors did not place a, quote, substantial burden on her First Amendment right to religious expression. The legal team representing Sterling disagrees with the court's decision. Her attorneys say they will work even harder to ensure religious freedom for U.S. military members.
Ontario, Canada, our neighbor to the north, has just passed a law giving the government power to take children away from their families if the parents do not accept the child's chosen gender identity. It basically makes it a form of child abuse. This follows a 2012 law that barred homeschooling families from teaching their children that homosexuality is a sin. Opponents fear these laws have wide-ranging effects on religious freedom.
It's okay, baby. It's okay.